Well, in the early days, we heard a lot of good teaching about marriage and family, probably because most of us were marrying age and none of us were married, so it was a very relevant message. But the thing that really stands out to me back then is that the pastors spoke with authority. In fact, it reminds me of Matthew chapter 7, the last couple of verses in Matthew chapter 7. Jesus had been speaking to multitudes, and it says that the crowds loved to listen to him because he spoke to them with authority and not like their scribes. The thing I want to point out about these courageous men is that they were speaking authoritatively from the Scriptures at a time in which our culture was beginning to marginalize men's and women's roles. It was becoming a melding pot. Against that cultural backdrop, that was just starting, and against that cultural backdrop, they spoke firmly about the roles, from Ephesians, for example, the role of a husband toward his bride. To love her, obviously, but to wash her with the Word, to obviously provide for her, but to do so sacrificially even if it costs you something. And the wife, likewise, was urged to behave towards her husband with respect, the same respect that the Holy Spirit shows the Father and the Son, or that the Son would show to the Father. And so what we began to see is that if our marriages and our families would be obedient to the Scriptures, we would picture the relationship between the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. And that would give credentials to our message. There's something about that is undeniable. And in this way we would bring souls to salvation. So we put it into practice. And the next thing that happened is that a number of us got married. We began to have children. Oh my goodness, the wealth of benefit the Scriptures had for us relative to raising children. I remember mostly from Proverbs. We were taught from all over the Scriptures, but especially from Proverbs. Proverbs seemed to model for us what a mom and a dad should be like, intentionally influencing their son and their daughter, calling their son and daughter to give them their hearts, and for us to be in a place of loving authority with our kids. Well, we started having babies. And the early babies that we watched, the early families, we just were blown away, really, by the fun and respect that we saw in those families. We saw kids that would obey and think it was fun. Or we saw, not all the time, but you get the picture. I mean, they were trained, we had teaching, we put it into practice, and it was gaining momentum. Our whole culture, we had a subculture here at Stonebrook. Families was our thing. And we saw kids who would be able to apologize if they did something wrong, and then they'd be free. It looked wonderful. We were raising kids, for the most part, who were emotionally stable. To be honest, most of us didn't even think about teaching our kids. We thought the Lord would be back. Honestly, we thought the Lord would be back before we had to think about such things, but He tarried, and so we began educating them, and then we sent them off to college, and then even helped them with their marriages or lead them into marriage, godly marriages. And through it all, the Scriptures was our guide. The Scriptures was our blueprint. And we believed that there would be good if we obeyed. So I just encourage you, if you look back 40 years, I'd like you to appreciate those men and women of courage. They set the pace for you and for me. And every generation is going to have their own challenges. We had ours, you'll have yours. But this is still true. Whichever couple chooses to believe that the Bible has something relevant to say about marriage and about raising their family will reap a tremendous harvest. They'll be fulfilled, and God will be honored. I see the lamp still burning here at Stonebrook. My wife and I have been tremendously blessed by the heritage that we have here at Stonebrook, that God gave Stonebrook. We are really blessed. You will be too. My prayer for you all here at Stonebrook is that you continue to believe God has something to say and something to obey. I just ask for God's blessing on this wonderful church family in courage and faith and zeal and in salvations.